All right. Well, again, as I said, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us on this lovely Monday after Thanksgiving. Hopefully, everyone had a great holiday, and it's fitting that we're talking about supply chain management on Cyber Monday. Hopefully, this is interesting enough to pull you away from Amazon for at least 30 of the 45 or so minutes. So I'm Professor Stephen Carnovale. I'm the director of the Supply Chain Management Program, Master's Program at RIT at Saunders. And this program is being brought to you by that program. It's a fantastic example of what modern education and supply chain management is. The 12-month program, 30 credits, so 10 classes. The classes cover a number of different areas, particularly things like supply chain analytics, international sourcing and global trade, negotiations on the more managerial skills, in addition to analytics, broadly speaking, not just in supply chain, but business analytics. It takes advantage of RIT's strong tech focus, where the electives in the courses and all the courses themselves expose students to a number of different new and upcoming technological advancements, tools, and techniques. So we're very grateful to the Supply Chain Management Program for sponsoring this webinar. But with us, we're fortunate to have two folks that went through the program. I know both of them very well. I'm very grateful to them for joining us today. We've got Kyle Chiapperino and Brendan Green. So in that order, I'll let them introduce themselves. Kyle, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Kyle Chiapperino, Rochester, New York native. Did my master's at RIT in global supply chain management, and I'm now working for St. Onge company, doing some engineering and supply chain consulting.
Thanks. Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Brendan Green. I graduated the same class as Kyle in May of this year, master's in global supply chain management. Also a Rochester native, and currently I work as a senior buyer at Carestream Health. We manufacture x-ray machines and x-ray detectors, among other things. And I worked in my family business for a while, and then I switched over to manufacturing, and now that's where I landed at Carestream.
Awesome. And the reason why I'm really grateful that both these gentlemen agreed to be on the webinar today is that they both pursued the degree in two different ways. So we're probably going to get to that, but basically Kyle did it like a madman, 5 classes in 5 classes. Brendan did it slowly over 2 years as he was working. So the degree is really flexible in that regard. So just wanted to make that aware for everybody. All right, so gentlemen, let's get right into it. On a day-to-day basis, Kyle, as a consultant in supply chain management, what do you do on a daily basis? What kind of projects are you working on? What things are you running into? Anything you'd like to tell us about that would be great.
Sure. So to give some background, St. Onge company is supply chain consulting. So really, we cover such a broad definition of supply chain that things can be different any given day. Our clients will come to us with certain needs, whether, I'm in the distribution end of things. So for me, the needs are focused around warehousing and distribution centers. So it may be, for example, a client will come to us and say, hey, we're running some capacity issues. Can you help us figure out whether we need to expand our facility in size or whether we can make it work by more efficiently moving our material around internally? So that would be an example of a project they come to us with. My job would then be to request data from them, whatever data might be helpful for that given project. They'll send that over to me. I'll sift through it, kind of clean up the data, perform some preliminary analysis on it. Then I'll reach out to the client again, ensure the data is accurate and they agree with my findings. And from there, I can then run a little further with the data. And if the conclusion from the data is, yes, we do need to expand the facility to make it work, they'll often have us then perform some engineering to come up with building plans and drawings on expected costs and how we can actually make that happen for them. If it's not the case and we can make things happen in their facility by moving things around, we'll again give them a cost analysis, give them that option and show them exactly how it gets done. So it's really each project is very open-ended and definitely full of surprises on any given day. So let's see, we got a comment. What kind of data am I collecting? So yeah, normally the data comes in Excel files. It will be things like order files. So a list of every single order transaction, both from the company side where they're ordering from suppliers. We'll see each item they ordered, when, how much of it, and also from the customer side. So how much is moving out to customers at any given time. And then we can use that to get an identification for how much at any given time of each material is in that warehouse. So that would be an example. It's pretty standard to be working with order files for every project. Things like inventory or other data that is only some companies keep it. That's where there's a lot more flexibility working on these projects. So yeah, again, it can be very broad. I have been a big fan of that because it keeps things spicy. You know, at any given day, I could be working on a new thing. It involves some traveling to meet clients. So if you like to travel, consulting is definitely a good avenue for just later today, I'll be hopping on a flight to Detroit. So yeah, it's definitely every day is a new experience. The projects are broad, the projects are very diverse, and that's kind of my role in supply chain.
So three things I want to bring up from that, and then we're going to move to Brendan. The first is those of you who do have questions, if you could put them in the chat, that'd be great. We'll probably end up waiting till we go through some other questions, and then we'll batch, much like supply chain people, we'll batch process the questions towards the end. So that's the first thing. But I encourage you, please do, I forgot to mention, please do put your questions in the chat. The second thing is you all have just witnessed history because I don't think in the history of supply chain, anybody has ever described it as spicy. And that is the only way I'm going to describe it moving forward. Thank you, Kyle. Amazing. And the third thing is on a practical, less joking level. It sounds like, Kyle, you do data is at the heart of your job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brendan, I want to take that and kind of run with it. I do want to hear obviously about what you do on a day-to-day basis, but does data play as large of a role in your day-to-day as it does in Kyle?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. You know, we use SAP at Carestream, constantly pulling reports on delivery dates versus when we, you know, have our statistical delivery dates, stuff like that. We pull consumption reports. You know, in my position, we're very, you know, they want us to be autonomous. They want us to really think about our, you know, we have a queue of parts that we all deal with. You know, I got about 30 vendors worldwide that I deal with mainly. So it's really on us to come up with stocking strategies to fit, you know, obviously keep the line running, keep production going, and then evaluate safety stock levels, evaluate, you know, how we can better, you know, more frequent deliveries, less frequent deliveries on, you know, C items, things like that. You know, they really put it in our hands to work on that. And that's all data driven. There's really no other way to do it. You know, any other way is just guessing. So yeah, 100%. It's always about data.
Is it as spicy as Kyle's day-to-day?
I don't know what his idea of spice is, but yeah, I'm sure we all have our moments.
So no, that's good. And it's interesting too, is I'm glad to have you both here for a number of reasons. One of which is the differences both in the kind of the path that got you to where you are versus the roles that you're currently occupying. So Kyle, you're focusing on problem-driven projects, which could change from project to project. Brendan, you're focusing on acquisition of materials, right? As a buyer, this is what you are focusing on, and then trimming out materials that aren't required anymore. So maybe let's do that. So Brendan, tell us a little bit about how you kind of zigzagged to get to being a buyer from starting out in the family business, as you said.
Yeah. So when I graduated my undergrad, I went to work for my father's small business here in Rochester, and I just naturally kept gravitating towards more of the operations side. Inventory control for service parts, inventory control for chemicals. We're a chemical distribution company. I was trying to always look for areas to trim. As a small business, it's always about cash flow. So whatever we could do to minimize inventory sitting there is just cash flow. It's getting eaten up. So that was a big thing. And it just fell into place. And, just by sheer luck, I found the program at RIT and it fit perfectly. And then after learning about it, I said, I want to get into manufacturing. I like the planning side, production side of things. So it just, fell into place. And the more you learn about it, the more into it you get. And so now I'm here.
Outstanding. So Kyle, the other reason, so you're in consulting, but what's cool about your background that I think some people would be interested to hear is that not everybody had a business background, then went into a different type of business discipline. You started out doing mechanical engineering. So maybe kind of talk a little bit about your trajectory so far working at the previous companies that you've have worked at rather, and then getting into supply chain consulting at St. Onge.
Sure. Yeah. So did my undergrad for mechanical engineering. Throughout that time, I was experimenting with different internships, different avenues of mechanical engineering. And the whole time through, I was finding myself a little drawn to, like Brennan, the operations side of things. So, for example, was doing a lot of purchasing for engineering projects. Along the way, we were working on designs and how kind of different equipment would fit together in certain processes. And I took on a larger role of, once we figured out how that equipment worked, what we needed, actually going out and shopping out the needs for our company. That kind of was where my, purchasing buyer aspect and interest kind of started playing a role. Then fast forward about a year, I was doing more of the same, purchasing, dealing with vendors. And that's when I kind of realized that I have an interest for it. It definitely, speaking with Professor Carnovale here, he steered me in the supply chain direction. I got into the program, and I think that's where I solidified my interests. And, even further than that, he kind of coached me towards the consulting because of my interests and, the diversity in projects and travel and all of that comes into play with consulting.
So one of the things that would probably be of interest to a lot of people listening, based on where you've been and where you're at currently, what do you see as your next couple of steps? I mean, do you, because the thing that I like about both of your experiences is that it's not linear. In most other fields, let's say finance, for example, you get your degree in finance, you become an analyst, you become a senior analyst, a vice president. Ultimately, you work this linear path to be the CFO. With supply chain, Brendan, you could send me a text tomorrow telling me that you went into, logistics as a director of the, so you can zigzag back and forth, which it's me personally, I think it's a great thing. So Brendan, I mean, do you see what other interests do you have with supply chain and what did your training do to prepare you to take those challenges on?
So currently, all companies kind of do it a little bit differently, but at Carestream, buyers and planners are separated. So my next, I guess, move would be I really want to get into planning, production planning, forecasting, things like that. And I think that stems, I know that stems from learning about it in the program. Forecasting is always this like mythical beast that everyone's trying to, sort of tame. And there's so much opportunity, and I don't think companies are nearly as brought up onto it as they need to be with terms of data driven, using statistical models like that. A lot of it's just a lot of it just ends up, we'll see what happens, let's throw a number out there and we'll kind of adjust and adapt as we go. I think the world that we live in now demands something a little bit more finely tuned. So that's where my interest lies. I like the, statistical modeling, stuff like that, and that all plays into planning. So that's probably my next move.
And do you plan on, and then we'll get to Kyle, but do you plan on staying in the manufacturing space, or could you ever see yourself navigating towards more of the services, maybe like a third-party logistics provider or something like that? Or do you see yourself staying in manufacturing?
I like manufacturing. Yeah, I like seeing how it all fits together. You're very in touch with a lot of different things. I like just the way, how you have to have a lot of people skills as well. We are dealing with people that build machines and things, so it's just an added layer of interest to me. And yeah, so I'll always be in manufacturing.
All right, so Kyle, your career trajectory has been definitely zigzagged, but it's a good intersection of your mechanical engineering training with the supply chain one. Do you see yourself staying in consulting, or would you potentially want to navigate more towards the in-house role? And how did your training prepare you to make that jump if you wanted to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the way I see things right now, I'm definitely interested in staying in consulting. I could see some allure to maybe finding an in-house place that is, a set role, always working on problems for that company. But right now, I do like the excitement of taking on unique projects consecutively. So I definitely see myself staying within consulting, at least for St. Onge supply chain consulting. There are really two avenues of growth going forward. It's really, you either strive to go a managerial route, take on more responsibilities in managing projects until ultimately you are the client facing, you manage the budget, the timeline, and all the encompassing project management role of each project. I think that's kind of where I'm currently leaning. The other avenue would be to kind of be more engineering focused going forward. So that would be taking on beyond just the data needs for the client. You would be going further to work on engineering designs, work on drawings that you'd then be communicating with the client's needs. So both, I think, I could find interest in. And it's ironic that with my engineering background, I actually feel myself leaning towards the management over the engineering. But I've grown to like a lot more of the interpersonal skills and communication that goes along with managing projects and working more directly with clients.
Yeah, so that first trajectory kind of sounds like project or program management, right? Where you're managing one project, right? And the other one is much more technical. That's great. So let's do a little bit about the thing that the biggest challenges that you guys face on a day-to-day basis in today's supply chain world. Brendan, what are you dealing with today that just drives you nuts?
That's a loaded question.
I asked it for a reason.
So I think the changing environment that we're in, nothing's stable. Prices aren't stable. Transportation's not stable. Customer, and now we're dealing, we're staring down the barrel of a economic recession, which some people are calling for. So it's making customer demand unstable. People are getting a little skittish. People are moving out orders, things like that. And that is by far the hardest part. I know you can kind of say that about a lot of things, but the uncertainty of, you develop a plan and it'll immediately get blown up. It's really hard to control inventory when you just don't know how long things are going to take. The semiconductors, you try to shield yourself from the semiconductor issues by more inventory, but those things are very expensive. So you're just kind of managing that, try to find other ways to limit inventory in other areas. So it's just, there's a lot of uncertainty on all sides, demand side, outbound side, we deal with a lot of transportation issues. So it's just one sort of problem after another. And managing everything and making sure you don't get out of hand either way it's challenging.
Kyle, what are you seeing that's causing you a lot of chaos?
Yeah, I think slightly similar to what Brendan was talking about is when our clients are dealing with extended timelines to get materials and extended timelines on equipment that they're purchasing for, let's say it's a new build for a project, it can mess with our project timeline with their needs from us as a consultant. So we've seen, projects where we're helping design the new racking layout, for example, for a distribution center. And now the client has a massively extended timeline because a bunch of their building materials aren't going to get here on time. So now from our perspective, our allotted time for that project is now spread out, an extra 3 months. We're going to take a stint where everyone on that project is taking on new projects and they have to be ready to go when the client's ready. So it does cause some stacking of projects. Each person on the team will be taking on new projects and then have to be ready to go when our client comes back to us and says, hey, it's go time. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed. Outside of that, realistically, from a consulting point of view, supply chain problems are kind of a good thing for us. They bring us business. So, it keeps things rolling our way, to be honest.
So if anything comes between the relationship between St. Onge and Carestream, I want 10% of what St. Onge gets as a minor speak. Okay.
Facilitator.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable, making connections, you're both my students. Yeah. Okay. All right. So last question here. Let's just talk about your favorite thing about supply chain in general that keeps you in this field. Like, what is it about this field that makes you want to continue to chart a path forward? And heck, I mean, what made you want to get a degree in it? One thing, and then move to some Q&A from the audience. Whoever wants to go, I have no preference.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say what drew me in was my desire to be more, client facing, a little more social in my role. And that's what drew me in. What kept me there was the fact that I was really good with the data. So it feels good to be able to get that data and roll with it and feel confident going forward. So yeah.
So if I were to translate that, you kind of, it's a field where you can leverage analytical abilities and problem solving, but at the same time be kind of people facing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Kyle's a unique example of an engineer who is people facing. No offense to any engineers on the call. You're all my friends. All right, Brendan, what about you? What keeps you in the middle of things?
So what drew me in was just the thought of how it actually all works. It's actually remarkable at how things go from raw materials halfway across the world and then end up on our doorstep, and then we turn it into a machine, and then it goes out and into a finished product to the customer. If you really think about it, it feels like it shouldn't work with how much needs to go right. And it's remarkable how it actually does. And what keeps me there is just the challenge of it. There's so many areas that you can get into, whether it be data analytics, like what Kyle does, whether it's more strategic, whether it's project management, new product implementation. There's just so much to it. And it just, everywhere you turn, there's just a new challenge that you can really just exercise whatever you've learned, past experiences and all that. And when you wake up, you're like, well, what's today going to hold? And it's fun. I will say it's fun.
Awesome. All right. So it looks like we've got one question here. Do you think that supply chain management will be automated, or the job market will decrease with the increase in more advanced software? So that could be a little bit more manufacturing driven. So Brendan, I mean, do you foresee, and certainly Kyle, you'll have experienced some stuff in warehousing, but Brendan, do you see automation impacting supply chain, and to what degree?
Well, I guess from a production standpoint, we do use some robots at Carestream, and that, obviously that's replacing a person. So there's that. But I think depending on what you're building, you're always going to need people to be, the human intervention into things. To fully automate it is super challenging. And it's costly, first of all. And from a software standpoint, I don't think you'll ever be able to just, set it and forget it, and you're just going to have your stuff there. I think there's a lot of human intervention, especially now. And at the end of the day, supply chain management, there's a lot of just soft skill, relationship building with suppliers. And that stuff's just never going to go away. You can't just computerize that sort of thing. You're still dealing with people on the other end. And for a machine to react to certain things that may not be, you can't put a number to things. You're always going to need humans for that. And I think, people with good soft skills, I think are going to be a little bit, they'll be an asset.
So Kyle, what's your pulse on automation? Certainly, if there is going to be automation, warehousing is a ripe opportunity for it. So what have you seen so far, and what do you think going forward?
Yeah, so I've actually seen some automation coming through. Some of the projects I've worked on have been automation adjacent, where the clients are actively installing automation equipment. And for warehousing and distribution centers, it's primarily, either like an auto store, which is a massive, it's pretty much racking that is all automated. So it's robotic bins that will raise and lower and deliver exactly the materials you need at any given time. Or, further, there's robots that will move through pre-existing racking and go collect your materials for you. Really, all of it is to make the warehousing and inventory management a little more easy to manage from less human interaction. But there's, even with those, the clients invest in these massive robotic inventory management systems. And at the end of the day, somebody needs to manage those systems. Somebody needs to know how to optimize those systems going forward. So they may have us, St. Onge, come in and suggest, which system would be best for automating their given distribution center. And we can give them options and give them, hey, this is the one that will have the best return on investment over this many years. They'll install it, and then they'll come back to us, 5 years later and say, hey, we have all these new products in our line. Maybe we need to figure out how to better manage the software end of this automation system. And then we'll go through, look at the data, and pretty much provide a software update for that automated system. So as far as automation taking away supply chain jobs, I don't really see that as much as it will require active support going forward. Yeah,
it's gonna shift where the demand is and for what jobs. And there was a study a couple of years back actually that showed typically for every one job that automation or robotics, broadly defined, takes away, there's usually 2 more support jobs that come as a result, right? So what ends up happening, to Kyle's point, is unless this is like, Skynet, a completely sentient being, which if that's the case, we don't have to worry about supply chains. There's a lot more to worry about. But if, unless it's that, you need to have human beings designing the back end for the support. Okay, very good. So Patricia's asking about entering into the supply chain from the outside, entry level roles and titles, and hiring manager. So I can touch on this one a little bit, and I want to see what Brendan and Kyle have to say about this. Job titles that I tell all my students who are looking to enter into supply chain for, first of all, I'd suggest that they look at an area that they find interesting, like logistics or purchasing or manufacturing, and then add the word analyst to the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go on Indeed, if you go on any of these job sites, look for procurement analyst, logistics analyst, supply chain analyst, which a lot of the time is what Brendan's doing as a buyer, just at a lower, more entry level. And as far as the employers that I speak with, how fussy are they about having a supply chain background? They're getting more fussy because there are more supply chain related degrees. But your colleagues that you're hiring, Brendan and Kyle, we do it in that order. How many of them are coming out with supply chain training? More so now than before, I imagine.
Definitely, yeah, more so now. People are getting degrees, people are getting certifications in it. It's definitely becoming a lot more education driven that is getting people into the field for sure. Yeah.
What about you, Kyle? Your colleagues that come in, are they, because it's more of an engineering company, are they still more engineering dominated, or are you seeing more supply chain folks breaking in?
Yeah, so as of recent, we're seeing more people with actual degrees in supply chain coming in, but historically, it's all been almost entirely industrial engineering. You know, that's the background that seems to be it fits into supply chain very well, especially with the projects I'm working on in distribution and manufacturing. That's industrial engineering is very parallel, and there's a lot of overlap there. So I'd say for a lot of roles, it's probably going to be engineers, some supply chain degrees now as they're becoming more prominent. And I think we see quite a bit of business roles that have some proven background or experience with supply chain skills.
And another comment, Brendan brought it up before. One way to get trained without it having a degree necessarily is to do certifications, but they work really well together. So something like the CPIN certification through Apex is one that tacks on really well to a degree. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions from the audience? Awesome. Well, again, I want to thank the Masters in Supply Chain program at Saunders. Those of you who might have come in a bit late, just to give you a heads up, it is a 12-month, 10-course, 30-credit program that covers a broad swath of plan, source, make, deliver components of the supply chain analytics. It's a STEM designated program. So those of you who might be considering it from an international area, that's the potential for 24 months additional OPT, optional professional training. It's a great group of faculty members that teach it, and it covers not just the hard skills, but the soft skills as well, negotiations, international sourcing, and you as a student get to choose from a number of different electives on how you want to kind of cater a bit of your degree. So thank you to the program, and more importantly, thank you to Brendan and Kyle, two of our great alumni, doing great things and representing RIT really well. So thank you both, and everybody have yourselves a great day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.